Dr. Unikim stared at the massive holographic display in the center of the Galactic Council's emergency chamber. The image showed something that made her stomach turn cold. A black swirling mass of darkness was eating everything in its path. Stars, planets, entire solar systems were disappearing into what looked like a hungry mouth in space. "The readings are getting worse every hour," said Minho Park, her research partner. He stood beside her, his face pale as he looked at the data. Streaming across his tablet, 3 inhabited star systems will be gone in 72 hours. Guan Li, the third member of their human research team, shook her head in disbelief. "Over 30 billion lives," she whispered. "Gone, just like that." The chamber was filled with representatives from across the galaxy. The Zenthari stood in perfect rows, their tall gray bodies motionless as they processed information with computer-like precision. The luminals floated nearby, their bodies made of pure energy crackling with worry. The Vorthok delegates sat in crystalline formations, their faceted bodies reflecting the light from the hologram in rainbow patterns. All of them were the smartest beings their species had to offer. All of them were terrified. "We have run every calculation possible," announced Keth, the lead Zenthari scientist. His voice was flat and emotionless, but Una could hear the defeat in it. "This anomaly consumes matter and energy at a rate that defies our understanding of physics. It grows stronger with everything it devours." A luminal named Bright Flow pulsed. "With dim colors, our energy manipulation technologies cannot affect it. We've tried redirecting its path, but it adapts to every method we attempt." The Vorthok representative, a being called Crystal Harmony, spoke in harmonized tones. "Our quantum predictive models show the same result in every scenario. Complete consumption of the 3 systems within the stated time frame." High Chancellor Zevon, the elderly leader of the Galactic Council, raised his hand for silence. Species, the Altarians, were known for their wisdom and leadership. "Then we must begin immediate evacuation of all 3 systems. We cannot save the worlds, but we can save the people." "What about the evacuation ships?" asked another delegate. "If this thing keeps growing, how far do we need to run?" "Our models suggest it will consume approximately 15% of this galactic sector before burning itself out," Keth replied. "We estimate 47 systems will be affected." The chamber erupted in panic. 47 systems meant hundreds of billions of lives. Even with their fastest ships and most efficient evacuation procedures, they could maybe save 10% of those people. Una watched the chaos around her and felt something burning in her chest. Humans had only been part of the galactic community. For 50 years, they were considered primitive by most standards. Their technology was basic, their science was behind by centuries, and their methods were often criticized as chaotic and unpredictable. But as she looked at all these advanced beings giving up, something inside her refused to accept defeat. "Excuse? Me," she said, stepping forward. Her voice was not loud, but something about it cut through the panic in the room. Chancellor Zevon looked down at her with surprise. "Dr. Kim, this is not the time for academic discussion. We need to focus on evacuation procedures." "With respect, Chancellor," Una said, her voice growing stronger, "I think we should focus on stopping this thing instead of running from it." The chamber fell silent. Every eye, sensor, and energy field turned toward the small human woman standing in the center of the room. Keth spoke first. "Dr. Kim, I appreciate human optimism, but the mathematics are clear. This is impossible to stop." "Your mathematics," Una replied. "Your methods. Your way of thinking about the problem." Bright Flow pulsed with confused colors. "Are you suggesting that human science is more advanced than ours?" "No," Una said simply. "I am suggesting that different problems might need different solutions." Crystal Harmony's faceted body created a discordant sound. "The laws of physics are universal, human. What works for us will work for you." Minho stepped up beside Una. "Maybe. But what if this thing does not follow the laws of physics as we understand them?" "The readings show clear violations of energy conservation," Guan added, joining them. "And the gravitational effects do not match any known stellar phenomena." Chancellor Zevon leaned forward in his chair. "What exactly are you proposing, Doctor?" Kim Yuna took a deep breath. She was about to say something that would either save billions of lives or make humanity look foolish in front of the entire galaxy. "Give us 72 hours, she said. "Let us try to solve this problem." The silence that followed was deafening. "Dr. Kim," the Chancellor said slowly, "this is not a research project. This is the greatest crisis our galaxy has ever faced." "Exactly," Yuna replied. "Which is why you should let the species that specializes in solving impossible problems take a shot at it." Keth's gray features showed something that might have been confusion. "Humans do not specialize in solving impossible problems. Your technology is centuries behind ours." "Our technology? Yes," Minho said. "But not our thinking. We approach problems differently," Juan explained. "Try things that should not work. Take risks that logical minds would never take." "That is not science," Crystal Harmony protested. "That is chaos." "Sometimes," Yuna said with a small smile, "chaos is exactly what you need." She looked around the chamber at all the advanced, logical, precise minds that had declared the problem unsolvable. Then she looked at her two human colleagues, who were nodding with the kind of determination that had carried their species from caves to stars. "In just a few thousand years, we have got this," she said. The aliens stared at her with the kind of bewilderment reserved for beings who had just claimed they could breathe in vacuum or swim through solid rock. But something in Yuna's voice, something in the way she stood with absolute confidence despite being the most primitive species in the room, gave them pause. Chancellor Zevon was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. "Very well, Dr. Kim. You have 72 hours, but we will continue evacuation procedures. When you fail, we want to save as many lives as possible." "We understand," Yuna said. "Thank you." As the chamber began to empty, alien delegates hurrying off to coordinate evacuation fleets, Keth approached the three humans. "I do not understand," he said. "How can you be so confident about something that defies all logic?" Yuna looked up at the tall gray being and smiled. "Because logic has not worked so far. Maybe it is time to try something else." As the aliens filed out, shaking their heads and preparing for the end of 3 star systems, 3 humans stood alone in the chamber, staring at the image of impossible destruction. They had 72 hours to save 30 billion lives, and somehow they were still smiling. Part 2. The human approach while alien fleets flee and governments collapse into panic. The human team does something unexpected. They split up. Minho takes a small crew to the edge of the anomaly in a primitive human vessel. Guan coordinates with Earth's remaining research stations. Yuna dives into the alien archives, searching for forgotten knowledge. The aliens observe with growing confusion as humans begin behaving in ways that defy logic. Instead of running calculations for weeks like proper scientists, they make intuitive leaps. Instead of following established protocols, they improvise. Minho's team starts conducting dangerous experiments directly in the anomaly's influence, while Juwan coordinates with unlikely allies, human artists, philosophers, and even children. The Zenthari ambassador Keth watches in horror as humans ignore safety margins and leap into theories that feel right rather than those proven by mathematics. The luminal collective Brightflow observes that human minds work in chaotic patterns that shouldn't produce results, yet somehow do. Part 3. The breakthrough, and it discovers something the alien archives buried. Ancient records of a similar anomaly that appeared in the galaxy's early days. The original creators of the weapon were a long-extinct species called the Harbingers, who built it as a doomsday device. Every advanced civilization that encountered it tried to solve it through pure logic and technology. All failed. Meanwhile, Minho's team makes a shocking discovery. The anomaly responds to emotional states and chaotic thought patterns. The more illogical their approach, the more the anomaly seems to react and slow its expansion. Guan's network reveals that human children, when asked to imagine solutions, consistently suggest approaches that align with Minho's findings. The 3 humans reunite their discoveries. The anomaly isn't just a weapon, it's a test. The Harbingers created it to see if any species could think beyond pure logic and embrace the chaos of creativity and intuition that marks truly evolved consciousness. Part 4. The Plantha. The human plan horrifies the watching aliens. Instead of a calculated technological solution, they propose something that sounds like madness. They want to sing to the anomaly. Not literally, but through coordinated chaotic action combining art, music, storytelling, and emotional expression with their crude technology. Yuna explains to the skeptical council that humans will use their greatest weakness, their inability to think purely logically, as their strength. They'll approach the anomaly not as scientists trying to solve an equation, but as conscious beings trying to communicate with another form of consciousness. The aliens watch in amazement as humans. Across 68 hours remained when the three humans made a decision that horrified every alien observer. They split up. "You want to do what?" Keth asked, his gray features showing confusion. He had followed the humans to their temporary workspace, unable to understand their methods. "We are dividing the problem into 3 parts, Yuna explained, as she packed data crystals into a travel case. Minho will take a ship to study the anomaly up close. Guan will coordinate with our people back on Earth. I will search through the Galactic archives for any historical data." This makes no sense. Crystal Harmony chimed from the doorway. "Proper scientific method requires collaboration and peer review. You cannot solve complex problems by working apart." Minho laughed as he checked his equipment. "Watch us." 2 hours later, Minho was aboard the human research vessel Determination, heading directly toward the anomaly. The ship was small by Galactic standards, built with human technology that most aliens considered barely functional. But it was fast, and more importantly, it was expendable. "Control, this is Minho," he said into his communicator. "I am approaching the outer edge of the phenomenon." "Copy that," came Jiwan's voice from the Galactic Council station.
I Readings show you are entering dangerous territory. I define dangerous."
Minho replied with a grin, back on the station. Every alien scientist watched the human ship's progress with growing alarm. The readings showed that no vessel should be able to survive where Minho was heading. "He will be destroyed," Bright Flow pulsed with worried colors. "The gravitational forces alone should crush his ship. Human ships are more flexible than ours," Guan explained calmly as she monitored multiple data streams. "We build them to bend instead of break." Meanwhile, Yuna had buried herself in the deepest levels of the Galactic archives. These were records going back millions of years, most of them considered too old or irrelevant for modern science. While other researchers focused on cutting-edge theories, she was reading ancient history. Dr. Kim, a Vorthok archivist, approached her workstation. "These files have not been accessed in over 50,000 years. What could they possibly contain that is relevant to current events?" "Sometimes old problems have old solutions," Yuna replied without looking up from her screen. "Your people keep everything. Somewhere in here is information about similar events." The archivist made a sound that might have been laughter. "Similar events? This anomaly is unique in recorded galactic history." "No," Yuna said quietly. "Is not 50 light years away from the archives, Minho was making discoveries that should have been impossible. His ship was not only surviving the approach to the anomaly, it was thriving. This is incredible," he reported. "The closer I get, the more stable my readings become. It is like the anomaly wants me to approach it. It cannot be correct, Keths." A voice came through the communication link. "Our models show that area should be completely lethal." "Your models assume the anomaly follows normal physics," Minho replied. "What if it does not?" He pushed his ship closer, ignoring every safety protocol he had ever learned. The aliens watching from the station expected to see his ship torn apart. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The chaotic energy readings from the anomaly began to stabilize wherever Minho's ship traveled. "It is responding to him," Bright Flow observed with amazement. "But how is this possible?" Guan, monitoring everything from her command center, was asking herself the same question. But instead of trying to understand it logically, she did something very human. She started making phone calls. "Hello, Dr. Sora," she said into her communicator. "Yes, I know it is late on Earth. I need you to listen to something and tell me what it sounds like to you." Dr. Sora Kim was a musician and sound engineer at Seoul University. She had no training in astrophysics or alien technology, but Juan played her the audio translation of the anomaly's energy patterns anyway. "That is not random noise," Sora said. After listening for several minutes, "There is a pattern there. It almost sounds like music, but sad music, like something crying." "Crying?" Giwan asked. "Yes, like it is in pain or very lonely." While Jiwan was talking to musicians, Yuna was making breakthrough discoveries in the archives. Deep in a section labeled Historical Curiosities, she found references to something called the Harbinger event. The records were fragmented and ancient, but they told a story that made her heart race. 12 million years ago, a species called the Harbingers had faced extinction. Instead of dying, they had done something unprecedented. They had transformed themselves into something else, something that could survive the death of stars and the passage of eons. The transformation was not complete, she read aloud to herself. The process left them between states, neither fully alive nor properly dead. They became something that hungers, but not for matter or energy. They hunger for connection, for consciousness that can understand their pain. She paused, her mind racing with possibilities. It created tests, she continued reading. Challenges to find species that could think beyond logic, beyond the limitations that kept them trapped. They wait in the dark between galaxies, hoping that someday, someone will be able to help them finish what they started. At that moment, her communicator buzzed with an urgent message from Minho. "Yuna, you need to hear this. I am picking up something that sounds like communication attempts. The anomaly is not trying to destroy things. It is trying to talk to them."
Oh, cross.
The galaxy Giwan was getting similar reports from the most unlikely sources. A child psychologist on Earth reported that when children were shown pictures of the anomaly, they consistently said, it looked sad. An artist in Busan claimed the energy patterns reminded her of someone reaching out for help. 3 humans working separately, but thinking as one species, were beginning to understand something that had escaped the galaxy's greatest minds. The anomaly was not a weapon. It was a cry for help that had been echoing across space for 12 million years, and somehow, only humans seemed able to hear it. "Control!" Minho's voice crackled over the communicator. "I am going to try something very stupid." "Define very stupid," Jiwan replied, though she was smiling. "I'm going to try talking back to it." In the archives, Yuna found the final piece of the puzzle. The Harbingers had not just created a test, they had created a doorway. But it could only be opened by beings who understood that sometimes the best solutions came not from thinking harder, but from thinking differently. 64 hours remained. The real work was about to begin. 56 hours remained when Yuna made the discovery that changed everything. She had been reading through the Harbinger archives for 12 straight hours, her eyes burning from staring at ancient text translations. Most of the records were damaged or incomplete, but slowly a picture was forming in her mind. The Harbingers were not warriors, she muttered to herself as she scrolled through another data file. They were explorers, scientists, artists. The more she read, the clearer it became. 12 million years ago, the Harbingers had been much like humans. They were curious, creative, and willing to take risks that other species considered foolish. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had tried to transcend death through pure logic and technology. The transformation process was flawed, Yuna read from a badly corrupted file. They became trapped between life and death, unable to move, forward or backward. Hunger they feel is not for matter or energy, but for completion. They seek minds that can think as they once did, before logic consumed their creativity. Her communicator buzzed. It was Juan calling from the station. "Yuna, you need to hear what we have discovered. The anomaly is definitely trying to communicate, but not through normal methods." "What do you mean?" It responds to emotional states. When Minho got frustrated with his equipment, the anomaly calmed down. When he started laughing at a joke I told him, it began pulsing in rhythm with his laughter. Yuna felt her heart racing. It is reading emotions, not just thoughts. Exactly. And there is more. I have been talking to people on Earth. Musicians, artists, children, even comedians. They all describe the same thing when I play them recordings of the anomaly's energy patterns. What do they say? They say it sounds lonely? Meanwhile, 50 light-years away, Minho was conducting the most dangerous experiment of his career. He had positioned his ship directly at the edge of the anomaly's main body, close enough that the gravitational forces should have crushed him instantly. Instead, he was having a conversation. "I know you can hear me," he said aloud to his empty ship. "I do not know how, but I know you understand what I am saying." The anomaly pulsed, and his instruments registered a pattern that almost looked like a response. "You have been alone for a very long time, have not you?" Minho continued. 12 million years, according to our research. That is longer than our entire species has existed. Another pulse, this one stronger. "The thing is," Minho said, settling back in his pilot chair, "we understand loneliness. Humans spend most of their lives feeling like they are the only ones who think the way they do. We know what it feels like to be misunderstood." For the first time since he had arrived, the chaotic energy readings from the anomaly began to stabilize into something that looked almost like language. Back on the Galactic Council station, every alien scientist was watching Minho's readings with complete bewilderment. "This is impossible," Kith declared. "He's having a conversation with a stellar phenomenon. Such things do not have consciousness." "Your instruments say it does not have consciousness," Juan corrected him. "But your instruments were designed to measure your kind of consciousness, not ours." "There is only one kind of consciousness," Crystal Harmony protested. "Is there?" Juan asked. "Then why can humans hear what you cannot?" She pulled up a new display showing energy patterns from the anomaly. 2 alien eyes, they looked like random chaos. But Juan had learned to see them differently. "Look at these patterns," she said. "Does that look random to you?" "Of course it does," Bright Flow pulsed. "There is no mathematical structure." "You are right," Giwan agreed. "There is no mathematical structure, but there is emotional structure. Watch." She played an audio translation of the patterns. To the aliens, it sounded like noise. But Jiwan had been listening to it for hours, and she was beginning to understand. "It is not trying to send us equations," she explained. "It is trying to send us feelings. Fear, loneliness, hope. The kind of things that do not translate into mathematics." Deep in the archives, Yuna was finding confirmation of everything her colleagues were discovering. The Harbinger records spoke of a species that had once been very much like humans, but had lost their way. They believed that pure logic was the highest form of consciousness, she read. They eliminated emotion, creativity, and intuition from their thinking processes. When they attempted transcendence, they discovered too late that these elements were not weaknesses to be overcome, but essential parts of what made consciousness possible. The final files were fragmentary, but their meaning was clear. The Harbingers had created the anomaly as a test, hoping that someday another species would find them and help them complete their transformation. But the test could only be solved by beings who still possessed what the Harbingers had given up. The solution requires not advanced technology or superior logic. Yuna read from the last intact file, but the willingness to approach impossible. Problems with hope instead of fear, creativity instead of calculation, and trust instead of proof. She grabbed her communicator and called both of her colleagues simultaneously. "I know what we have to do," she said without preamble. "We know too," Minho replied from his ship. "This thing is not trying to destroy anything. It's trying to find someone who can help it live again." "The test is not about solving a problem," Juan added. "It is about proving that consciousness can exist without losing the things that make life worth living." Yuna smiled for the first time in days. "Then we know how to pass the test." "How?" both her colleagues asked. "We do what humans do best. We be human." 48 hours remained, but for the first time since the crisis began. The 3 humans were not worried about the time limit. They were too busy planning something that would either save the galaxy or get them laughed out of it around them. Alien scientists continued their evacuation preparations. Convinced that the humans were about to fail spectacularly, they had no idea that humanity was about to rewrite the rules of what was possible. So Minho asked over the communicator, What exactly does being human involve in this situation? Una looked around the archive chamber, filled with millions of years of alien knowledge and logic, and grinned. We are going to teach a 12-million-year-old consciousness how to laugh again. 36 hours remained when the three humans presented their solution to the Galactic Council. The reaction was exactly what they had expected. Complete horror. You want to do what? Chancellor Zevon asked, his elderly features showing disbelief. Una stood calmly in the center of the emergency chamber, facing hundreds of the galaxy's most logical minds. We want to sing to it. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Crystal Harmony's faceted body creating discordant notes of confusion. Sing, Keth, repeated slowly. You want to sing to a cosmic phenomenon that threatens to destroy? 3 star systems. It's not just Sing, Guan clarified from her position at the communication console. You want to create a coordinated expression of human consciousness across the entire galaxy. That makes even less sense. Bright flow pulsed with worried colors. Minho's voice came through the speakers from his ship near the anomaly. It makes perfect sense if you understand what the anomaly actually is. We have explained this, Una said patiently. The anomaly is not a weapon or a natural disaster. It is the preserved consciousness of an ancient species that forgot how to feel. They created this test to find someone who could help them remember. Even if we accept your theory, Chancellor Zevon said, how does singing solve anything? Because, Una replied, singing is something you cannot do with pure logic. It requires emotion, creativity, and the willingness to make sounds that might not be perfect. Around the chamber, alien delegates exchanged looks of bewilderment. The Zenthari prided themselves on precise communication. The Luminals shared thoughts through controlled energy patterns. The Vorthok spoke in mathematically perfect harmonies. None of them understood why anyone would choose to make imperfect sounds on purpose. Let me show you what we mean, Juan said. She activated a recording from Earth. The sound that filled the chamber was unlike anything most aliens had ever heard. It was a human child, maybe 6 years old, singing a simple song about stars. Her voice was not perfect. She missed some notes and forgot some words. But there was something in that voice that made the energy readings from the anomaly change. Anomaly responds to this, Minho reported from his ship. Every time we play recordings of human music, art, or even just conversation, it calms down. But that is just one child, Crystal Harmony protested. How can one small voice affect something so massive? It cannot, Una agreed. That is why we need more voices, many more. She activated the main display, showing a map of human settlements across the galaxy. There were thousands of them, from tiny research stations to major colony worlds. We want every human in the galaxy to participate, she explained. Not just scientists or musicians, but everyone. Children, artists, farmers, engineers, teachers, doctors. Everyone? Participate in what exactly? The Chancellor asked. In being human, Juan said simply. We want them to sing, to tell stories, to paint pictures, to dance, to laugh, to cry. To do all the things that make us human, instead of just logical machines. Alien delegates stared at them in complete confusion. You want to solve the greatest crisis in galactic history, Keth said slowly, by having your people act emotionally instead of rationally. Yes, all 3 humans said at the same time. This is madness, Brightflow declared. Probably Minho agreed cheerfully from his ship. But it is the kind of madness that has gotten humanity this far. Una stepped forward, addressing the chamber directly. You want to know why human technology seems primitive to you? It is because we do not just build machines, we build dreams. Every human ship, every human tool, every human city is built not just to function, but to make us feel something. She gestured to the holographic display showing the anomaly. The Harbingers built this test because they realized too late that pure logic without emotion is not evolution, it is death. They want to find a species that still remembers how to be alive, not just intelligent. Even if your theory is correct, Chancellor Zevon said, your plan requires perfect coordination across impossible distances. How do you synchronize the actions of millions of humans across the galaxy? Giwan smiled. We do not. What? We do not synchronize them? She repeated. That is the point. We let them be chaotic, unpredictable, and individual. The beauty is not in the coordination, but in the chaos. She pulled up another display showing communication networks across human space. We are going to send one simple message to every human settlement. Be yourselves. Sing your favorite songs. Tell your best stories. Create whatever makes you happy. Do not worry about doing it right or doing it together. Just do it with feeling. And somehow Minho added from his ship, this will communicate with a 12-million-year-old consciousness that has forgotten how to feel emotions. How can you be certain this will work? Crystal Harmony asked. The three humans looked at each other. Finally, Yuna answered. We cannot be certain. That is exactly why it will work. The alien delegates spent the next hour arguing among themselves. Some wanted to stop the humans before they embarrassed the entire galaxy. Others were curious to see what would happen. A few were beginning to suspect that human irrationality might not be as illogical as it seemed. Finally, Chancellor Zevon called for order. Dr. Kim, your plan violates every principle of scientific methodology and crisis management that we know. Yes, sir, Yuna replied. It relies on unprovable theories and uncontrollable variables. Yes, sir.
Yes.
It asks us to trust the fate of billions of lives to people singing songs and telling stories. Yes, sir.
Yes.
The Chancellor was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. Permission granted. What? Several delegates protested at once. Permission granted, the Chancellor repeated. Dr. Kim, you have 24 hours to coordinate your galaxy-wide concert. We will continue evacuation procedures, but we will not interfere with your efforts. As the chamber erupted in arguments and protests, Yuna smiled at her colleagues. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, she said, now we just have to save the galaxy with the power of human. Weirdness could be worse, Minho replied from his ship. How could it be worse? Juan asked. We could have to do it logically. 24 hours remained. Time to get weird. 12 hours remained when the galaxy-wide experiment began. Across human space. From the outer colony worlds to the research stations orbiting distant stars, millions of people received the same simple message, be human, on New Sol Colony, A. A teacher named Hannah gathered her students in the playground. Today we are going to help save the galaxy, she told the confused children. All we have to do is be ourselves. The children looked at each other uncertainly. Then one small boy raised his hand. Can we sing the song about the silly space whale? Perfect, Hannah said with a smile. On Mars Research Station, Dr. Sora Kim sat at her music synthesizer, staring at the energy patterns from the anomaly that Ji-Wan had sent her. Instead of trying to match them exactly, she began playing what the patterns made her feel. The music that came out was haunting and beautiful, full of loneliness and hope mixed together. On the mining world of Kepler 44b, a young artist named Tiemann was painting his interpretation of the crisis. His canvas showed not a monster devouring stars, but a lost child reaching out in the darkness, hoping someone would take its hand. Everywhere humans lived, the response was the same. They did not try to be perfect or coordinated. They just tried. To be human, in his ship near the anomaly, Minho watched his instruments as the first waves of human expression began to reach across space. The effect was immediate and startling. Control, you need to see this, he reported to Ji-Wan. The anomaly is responding to every single transmission, not just reacting, but responding. It's like it is listening to each individual voice. Back on the Galactic Council Station, alien scientists watched their instruments with growing amazement. The chaotic energy readings from the anomaly were beginning to form patterns, but not mathematical ones. They looked like emotional responses.
Right.
This is impossible, Quet muttered for the 100th time. Mass consciousness cannot affect stellar phenomena. Or mass consciousness cannot, Ji-Wan corrected him. But you have never seen human mass consciousness before. She pulled up a display showing human settlements across the galaxy. Each one was broadcasting something different. Songs, stories, artwork, even just people talking about their hopes and fears. It should have been a cacophony of meaningless noise. Instead, it was becoming something beautiful. "Look at the patterns," she said to the assembled aliens. "Each human is doing something completely different, but together they are creating something that has never existed before." On the display, the combined transmissions from millions of humans were weaving together into something that looked almost like a vast, complex song. Not organized or planned, but organic and alive. In the archives, Yuna was monitoring the ancient Harbinger records. As the human transmissions spread across space, the old files were beginning to activate, responding to something they had been waiting 12 million years to hear. "The Harbingers are waking up," she reported to her colleagues. "The consciousness trapped in the anomaly is becoming more active, more aware." "Is that good or bad?" Minho asked from his ship. "I think it is both," Yuna replied. The anomaly was changing. The dark, hungry mass that had been devouring everything in its path was beginning to pulse with new colors. Deep within its center, something that had been sleeping for eons was stirring to life. But with that awakening came danger. "Patrol." Minho's voice suddenly turned urgent. "I am reading massive energy spikes. The anomaly is destabilizing." Around the galaxy, human transmissions continued. Children sang off key songs. Artists painted impossible pictures. Musicians played melodies that broke every rule of harmony. Writers told stories that made no logical sense, but somehow felt true. And in response, the anomaly began to sing back. The sound that emerged from the cosmic phenomenon was unlike anything anyone had ever heard. It was not music in any traditional sense, but it was definitely communication. The voice of a consciousness that had been alone for 12 million years, finally hearing others who understood loneliness. "It is working," Giwan whispered, watching her instruments record the impossible conversation between humanity and the Harbingers. But as the anomaly's response grew stronger, so did the danger. The energy output was increasing beyond anything their models had predicted. "Evacuation fleets, this is Control." Chancellor Zevon's voice came over the emergency channel. "All ships maintain safe distance. We are reading unprecedented energy levels, Minho." "Get out of there," Yuna ordered. "Your ship cannot survive what is coming." "No," Minho replied calmly. "I am staying. If this is going to work, someone needs to be here to bridge the gap between human consciousness and Harbinger consciousness. I am the only one close enough." "That is suicide," Crystal Harmony protested. "Maybe," Minho said, "but that is what humans do. We take risks that no logical mind would take." As he spoke, his ship was being buffeted by forces that should have destroyed it instantly. But somehow, the little human vessel held together, protected by the same phenomenon that was reshaping the anomaly around it. Across the galaxy, humans continued their strange concert. They sang lullabies to lonely gods and told jokes to cosmic consciousness. They painted pictures of hope and wrote poems about the beauty of imperfection. And slowly, impossibly, the anomaly began to transform. The dark, hungry mass was becoming something else. Colors that had no names spread through its structure. The gravitational distortions that had threatened 3 star systems were shifting into something that looked almost like a smile. "Energy output is stabilizing," Jawan reported with amazement. "The anomaly is not just responding to us, it is learning from us." In the ancient archives, Yuna watched as files that had been dormant for millions of years came fully online. The Harbinger consciousness was not just awakening. It was remembering what it had forgotten. How to feel, how to hope, how to be something. More than just logical patterns in space. 5 minutes to critical threshold, announced the station computer around the galaxy. Humans held their breath. Everything now depended on whether 12 million years of loneliness could be healed by the simple act of not being alone anymore. 0 hours remained, but time no longer mattered. The transformation was complete. Where once a hungry darkness had threatened to devour 3 star systems, something unprecedented now existed. The anomaly had become a living constellation, pulsing With colors that had no names and singing songs that could be felt across the galaxy, Minho sat in his battered ship at the center of it all, tears streaming down his face as he witnessed something that would be remembered until the end of time. "Control," he whispered into his communicator, his voice filled with wonder. "You need to see this." The transmission he sent back showed the impossible made real. The anomaly was no longer consuming matter and energy. Instead, it was creating. Them stars that had been devoured were being reborn, not as they were before, but as something better. Planets that had been destroyed were reforming, their surfaces covered in patterns that looked like art. "The Harbingers are not just alive again," Una reported from the archives, where ancient records were updating themselves in real time. "They are teaching us these patterns, these new stellar formations. They are instructions." "Instructions for what?" Juan asked. "For how to evolve beyond the limitations of single consciousness? How to become part of something larger without losing what makes us individual." Back on the Galactic Council station, every alien delegate stared at the displays in stunned silence. The readings showed that the 3 threatened star systems were not just safe. They were being transformed into something that had never existed before. Energy readings are off all known scales. Bright flow pulsed with colors that indicated complete bewilderment. But the energy is not destructive. It is creative. The gravitational effects are creating stable connections between star systems, Crystal Harmony reported. Faster than light communication and travel are now possible through these conduits. "How is this possible?" Keth asked, his logical mind struggling to process what he was seeing. "Because," said a new voice, one that seemed to come from everywhere at once, "you finally sent us teachers instead of students." The voice belonged to the Harbingers, speaking through their transformed creation. But it was not the same consciousness that had been trapped in the anomaly. This was something new, something that combined 12 million years of accumulated knowledge with the fresh perspective of human creativity. "We spent eons trying to perfect ourselves through logic alone," the voice continued. "We eliminated emotion, creativity, chaos, all the things we considered flaws. In doing so, we eliminated the very essence of what makes consciousness worthwhile." Chancellor Zevon found his voice first. "You are the Harbingers? It's the ancient species from the archives?" "We were the Harbingers," the voice replied. "Now we are something new, something that remembers what we forgot, thanks to the humans who showed us that imperfection is not a flaw to be corrected, but a feature to be celebrated." The transformed anomaly pulsed, and suddenly every being in the galaxy could feel what the Harbingers had learned: the joy of making mistakes, the beauty of unexpected solutions, the strength that comes from admitting you do not know everything. "What happens now?" Una asked. The Harbingers said, "We share what we have learned. These new stellar connections are not just transportation networks. They are consciousness networks. Any species that chooses to join them will have access to 12 million years of accumulated knowledge, combined with the capacity for growth that only comes from embracing uncertainty." The implications were staggering. Instant communication across the galaxy, shared knowledge without loss of individuality, the ability to solve problems by combining logic with intuition, science with art. "Why us?" Minho asked from his ship. "Why did you choose humans?" "We did not choose you," the Harbingers replied. "You chose yourselves. Every species that encountered our test tried to solve it through superior technology or advanced logic. Only humans approached it with the one thing we had lost and desperately needed to remember." "What was that?" Giwan asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "The willingness to try anyway, even when success seems impossible. The courage to be imperfect in pursuit of something perfect. The understanding that the best solutions often come not from thinking harder, but from thinking differently." Around the galaxy, humans were celebrating, not because they had saved 3 star systems, but because they had made a friend. The loneliest consciousness in the universe was lonely no more. On the Galactic Council station, alien delegates were struggling to understand what had just happened. "So the crisis is over?" Crystal Harmony asked. "The crisis was never about destruction," Una explained. "It was about connection. The Harbingers were not trying to destroy the galaxy. They were trying to find someone who could help them heal from 12 million years of emotional isolation. And now, Now they are part of something larger, Minho said as his ship began its journey home. And so are we. The transformed anomaly pulsed one final time, sending a message that every consciousness in the galaxy could understand regardless of species or language. Thank you for teaching us how to laugh again. As evacuation fleets turned around and began the journey home, as 3-star systems celebrated their unexpected rebirth, as the galaxy adjusted to the reality of instant communication across impossible distances, 3 humans sat in quiet satisfaction. They had done what they promised. They had saved the galaxy, not through superior technology or advanced mathematics, but through the simple act of being human. So Giwan asked her colleagues, "What do we do for our next impossible problem?" Eunice smiled as she watched the new stellar network spreading across the galaxy, connecting civilizations that had never been able to communicate before. "I think," she said, "we just keep being ourselves." And in the space between stars, consciousness that had been alone for 12 million years laughed with joy, finally understanding what it meant to be part of something greater than the sum of its parts. The galaxy would never be the same. But then again, the best changes never left things the same.